Good day everyone, and welcome to another tutorial in the 4Anime series. Today will be sort of like a follow-up of the previous one, and that is for a smaller garden type sprinkler. It has a very different approach, but it also still uses particles. So let's get into it. So first of all, we're going to need some sort of focus point. We're going to use the center of our scene, you know, this little 3D cursor over there as our center, and we're going to add a cylinder. Now the reason we're adding a cylinder is because we want to make a garden sprinkler like you just saw, and that means that it's going to have to kind of fan out. That fanning out needs a cylinder, and you'll see why in a bit. I think I've covered this technique in a previous tutorial, but I'm not sure, so we're just going to go with it. Of course it needs to be unwrapped, so just go into a front view, press U and go cylinder projection. Going into your UV image editor, just click on this little X to get rid of that. As you can see, I still have the faces on, my bad. I'm just going to get rid of the faces because they prove absolutely non-useful. So there you go, you can see it's perfectly unwrapped, it's in its place, not a problem. Okay, so now we need to give it a material. So just tab out of it, and let's call this one sprinkler spray. And you can make it shadeless if you want to. Let's make it shadeless for now. I made it shadeless in the example, so I'm going to keep it shadeless. We are going to be using transparency, but just not yet. Shadow, receive transparent. Doesn't really matter if you have auto ray bias on or not, or receiving transparent shadows because it's shadeless. So you can actually turn these off. If you want to, you can turn also off the casting of shadows, but I know that some of you guys are like me, you really want the advantage of 3D as well, so you can just leave those on. And I think we're good. Now we get to add a texture. So we're just going to click new. Doesn't matter what it says over here, we're just going to name it main texture, and we are going to be adding that normal influenced texture. So I'm just going to make a new gap for it because we are going to have to warp it. So I'm going to call this one let's call it like a gloss. I'm just going to call it gloss. It's going to be vertical, and we are going to be using constant interpolation, just like that. And for the time being, I am absolutely going to leave it off. Okay, so back to the main texture. Open your node editor and go into the texture box over here. Now I'm going to be using Blender Render. If you don't want to use Blender Render, you can still make this texture in Blender Render and put it into cycles. It's not mandatory for you to use Blender Render. It's just my main choice because it just works easier. Okay, so we're going to need a cloud texture. So getting a cloud texture over here, and we first need to make it repeatable or tileable, but only on the x-axis because this thing is round. So to do that, you just get a distortion scale and you go -1, and on top of that you also get a blend texture, which gives us like a factor, and of course a mix RGB. Let's just pop that one right there. And now we need to figure out which one goes where. It should be fine either way. I think it'll look better this way. You have to pick which side you want it to repeat itself on. Okay, now we also need to scale it beyond just this typical scale. So if you want to, you can do it over here. I prefer to, it's a little bit easier. So how much? Just need to make it. Let's go with that. I think that's good. Let's go with that. Okay, let's see what that looks like over here. Just turn off freestyle so it goes a little bit faster. Yeah, I think that'll be good. Looks really nice. So you can't even see that there's a seam. You're gonna have to look for it. You can see it's over here because of the repetition, but it's very, very subtle. Look at that. Oh, it's here too. Anyway, moving on. So now we're going to do the modeling part first, and then we're going to come back to finish this texture. So switching back over here. Of course, we're going to make it smooth. Not that it's really necessary, but I think it may help with the reflection. I didn't taste it. Okay, now the difficult part here is that we need to keep our UV intact so that the flow of the water is consistent. It shouldn't go like super fast and then super slow and then super fast and super slow as it, you know, kind of funnels out. So to do that, you have to be very careful how you model. So this will be the end and the starting points, and then we're going to take it from there. So this is going to be our middle point of the water flow. As you can see, it's fairly harsh. Just need to make it more rounded. That's the best way to put it. Of course, this one has to come in way center. If you want to, you can collapse it, but it may mess with your UV. So if you just press S and 0, it'll look like a point, while still giving you the ability to do this whole pointed thing. So going into Z, so you can see easily what we're doing. Just going to push this a little bit up, and I'm going to make this one come in a little bit more, and these are going to come in a little bit more as well. If you want to, you can add a little bit in here too, or you can just use a subdivision surface modifier. That'll also be fine. I think from here I'm going to just do this one, just so it has a little bit of a rounding at the top. Something like that. Okay, now you can see we've created a very nice little funnel shape for our sprinkler. It's already smooth. You can make it double-sided. I don't think it's gonna matter, honestly. And now if you look at the shape, look at that. You get the water coming out just like that. Isn't that amazing? Absolutely amazing. Okay. Next, we need to get that texture finished. So just to get a little bit more speed, I'm going to focus on that little point and switch back to texture. If it doesn't show, just hit home when you're on it. Okay, so now we need to make two things. We need to make it gradual, and we need to add some blue where the water is solid. So the water being solid is a little bit simple, if I can put it that way. You can, let me just get my bearings together. Just put this in the output. I find it's best not to have this thing open while you're doing this, just a heads up. Okay, get a color ramp. Now this one is also going to be constant, and of course you're going to be using blue. You can get a nice, you can go for a darker blue because you are going to kind of blur this over itself. And of course we do need foam, and because we need foam, we need white. So going to make one white, and we're going to need one for transparency as well. If you want to, you can make it white as well, just for the sake of masking and all that other stuff. Okay, so let's just see what we're dealing with. I think we can make it a little bit larger than that. Something like that. Okay. Of course, we also need to be making this thing move and warp. To do that, you're going to be using a translate or scale. I think translate works in this instance. Let me just get this texture over here. I did scale it, making it larger so that the warping isn't too intense. So that goes in there, and that goes in there. See, that's a little too severe. So I remember just reducing this to be about 0.3 or something. Let's go for 0.35 as a good start. Okay, now let's zoom in and see what we got. Ah, see, that looks nice. I like that. Kind of stretches it out a little bit. Do you think we need to stretch it out a little bit more? It's like it's too fine, you know. I think we need to reduce this. Let's see if that helps. No, it needs to be larger. It's too... No, it depends on how fine you want this spray thing in the middle. I think for this example, I'm going to go at least for this for now, or just make it just a little bit more. Let's go 0.25. I like 0.25. 0.25 is better. Okay, we're going to go for 0.25. See, you have to adjust these things as you go. You really do. Okay, so now we need to create a progressive breakup of the water. To do a progressive breakup, you can also use this texture. And you can just get a mix node. And we're going to be focusing on the cloud texture itself. So using, I think we're going to use this one. Okay, right there. And we're going to be having to fade it out. So what you can do is you can also use color ramps in this instance. So you can start it off with it just being the regular texture, but it has to have transparency to it. We have a different way of getting the transparency into it, so I'm just not going to rush into that one. I think that looks nice, not too sharp. And then we have to make one that is very sharp. So let's just get this texture running over here. Yeah, that'll be the one that's very sharp, the grayish one. We also need to adjust the factor here because it's way too intense. So let's you have to make this one sharper. Yeah, just like that. It has to kind of break up as it goes while still having some form of strength. Okay, that looks nice. So this has to go over, has to blend very nicely. Something like that. And there you go. Now you have that kind of funnel thing going. And of course it needs to be combined and it needs to be made transparent. So to do that you can also again just go for the color ramp, you know, placing it at its normal values and going for a transparent and going for a, you can make this one blue if you wish. One has to be white, one has to be blue transparent. So let's make this one the blue transparent. Sorry, I'm a little bit winging it today. Okay, so that one's going to be the white. See, it has to be inverted. That's interesting right there. Don't want it to be confused. So yeah, you can always use this one as a reference for what you're busy with. Okay, so of course we do need transparency working. So when you have the transparency active, you can just switch that on and make sure that transparency is actually transparent. So there you go. Now you can see you have a nice funnel thing going over there. Of course, I do think this is way too harsh. I'm going to switch to, I think possibly B-spleen, something just to make it a little bit finer. Just as it breaks up. So it goes from strong to subtle. And of course, then we need to combine the, forgive me, the internal little funnel thing with all these textures. Okay. So what you can use that's really, really simple in terms of combining these is to go for a separate RGBA node. I just need to find it. I know it's in here somewhere. There we go. Separate RGBA. And we're going to go for this one right there. And that is going to be our factor. Let me show you what that's going to look like. and we're going to have one be that factor. That's perfect. And the other one is going to be, of course, that. And then we have our little solid water in the middle. Of course, this does mean we do need a better alpha channel situation, and for that you can just combine the two. So again, you're going to need a separate RGBA node. Let me just find it again. Didn't you just say that? Okay. Separate RGBA, and you're going to add your alpha channels together. Let me just get that working. Add on one, and we need to get a combine RGBA and a separate RGBA again, so that we can combine R, G, B, and A. Boom, right there. And then you can see there's no more splitting into that area over there. Much better. Much better. Okay, now if you wish, you can make it larger. I want to make it a little bit larger. I don't think it's nice enough. Hold on. Don't want it to be too strong. Anyway, I'm gonna make the white just a, oh goodness, not that far. I'm just gonna make the white a little bit broader. I'm gonna take this down a little bit more, just like that. Okay, now it makes sense. That was my mistake. Okay. I'm gonna make this white. Saturation down. Yeah. Okay. Okay, I'm happy with that. I'm sure you guys are happy too. If you're not, oh well. Okay, now we need to animate this. We're just going to add one in here and going to add a translate node. And we're going to animate it along the y-axis. Let's just check which way it's supposed to go. Can't really tell. Okay, it's going to have to go to the negative. Wonderful. Okay, so insert a single keyframe and move it over and make it -1. And insert another keyframe. Then, of course, we go through the usual stuff of extrapolating it so that it's perpetual. And now we need to scan through it just to make sure it goes fast enough. And that is exactly why we have to check it, because it's barely moving at all. Taking it down, moving it over. That might be a little bit fast, but you know what? I've noticed that these things move so fast that sometimes it looks like every frame will be different. So I think that this should do nicely in terms of speed. So let's look at the core, what the core does. Let's just make it a little bit larger. Looks very nice. Like the way it kind of breaks up. I think I might want to just broaden that texture a little bit more. It's just not exactly what I want just yet. Let me just go to the node editor. Where did I scale that thing? It's over here. Let's go for 0.1. 0.15. Yeah, let's go for 0.15. Anyway, that's good. Okay, so just for reference, this is what it's going to look like. As you can see, it repeats. And that is exactly what we want. And there we have the basic idea. Okay, what we need to do now is we need to get that band working. Now to do that, we have to add another cloud texture. Yeah, when I made the test run, I did add another cloud texture, so I'm going to add one in here as well. So let's call this warping. remember to save often. You don't want to build all these textures and then the thing crash on you. That's not a fun time. Set it to normal. You can leave that in for now. We have to also scale it fairly fine. And this is going to, like I said, be our warp texture. Okay. Now this thing is turned on. I just want to see if it shows. No, it's not showing. I think it does need some alpha. Yes, it does. No, not this one. This one. You can just say add, just like that. Okay, I think it looks good. We just need to start warping it so that it actually breaks up, you know. So you can turn off the color and start turning on the warping. You may have to shift the thing up or down. Not necessarily, but you may have to. And of course it does need to be shrunk down a little bit because it's way too strong, way too thick. And I'm going to reduce the warping as well. Let's go for 0.5. 0.5 is a little bit severe. 0.4. I like 0.4. Gonna make it a little bit thinner. I actually want to make it a little bit more gradual as well. Ooh, look at that. That's pretty. I like that. Okay, we're going to keep it like this. This is going to look better than my initial result. It's so sad. Okay. Now, of course, we need to put this into a basic scene, so I'm just going to make some grass. Since I already have a plane in here, I'm going to just make it 0 on the Z. Expand it, make it green. Why on earth did I make that blue? Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And this has to be a darker green. It's to be much larger. Okay, that's good. And it needs a cloud texture. So let's call this one thinking let's call this grass. Let's call this grass. Okay, let's check out the material. That's fine. Oh, no, generated, thank you. And it has to be multiply. Oh, perfect. Hitting save and checking it out. Of course, it's not showing because I'm on the freestyle layer. Oh, that's pretty. Okay, one thing we definitely need to do is we need to reduce the samples over here. In my default scene, I've got a 7 sample sun lamp that's got really pretty soft shadows. Don't use that right now. Okay, I'm just going to also make the sun point kind of down because it's midday. It has to be blue because it's midday. Okay, this has to be a darker saturated blue. And this one is desaturated. Okay. Now let's use blend sky and just not real sky. Make this one stronger. Okay. Of course, the grass texture is way too small. I thought it was big enough. It's not. Let's use global. I used global initially. See, global is also too big. Let's go for 0.5. 0.4. to 0.1. No, 0.1 is nice. I like 0.1. Okay, now as you can see, there is a bit of a shadow problem. That comes from two areas. One is, of course, environment lighting, which is a problem. See the difference it makes when you have it on versus off. And the other problem is just the fact that this reflection thing generally doesn't have a shadow, but in this case we can't help it having a shadow unless you do two shapes and all that kind of stuff, which I'm not going to do. I'm really just not. Okay, so I'm fairly happy with this. I do think that the breakup needs to be a little bit more intense. I think the water needs to be a little finer too. So let's scale that. Where's my cylinder? Just doesn't want to focus on it. Okay. Where's that initial scale? There it is. Let's make it 40. Or 30. 30 looks good. I like 30. And of course, where's our gradualness? Here's the gradualness. Make it ease. Okay, that's where we're at. Okay, and this one I want to break up a little bit more. Something like that. Okay. Oh, that's so pretty. I like that. Of course, you can adjust it more. This is just the basic idea. Okay. I'm fairly happy with this. It, of course, needs to be complemented with some particles. Now you have a few options when it comes to the particles. Personally, the easiest way I've found to do it is to use a circle and extrude it inwards and to lift it slightly upwards, so that when you now add particles to it and you make them respond to the normals, just like that. So of course I do want it to go a little bit higher than that, and it needs to be a lot narrower as well. You're just gonna have to eyeball it in a way, you know. So yeah, let's put this thing in the center. Right there. Let's just see how big it is. Has to be a lot smaller so that it comes out of the center properly. You can, if you want, to put it like inside over here. It's not going to show by emitter, so it's fine. It's really fine. Let's put it actually over here. It'll make it a little bit more consistent. Okay, apply that and hit play. Okay, that's way too strong. So let's go for 5 and Z. 4 and Z. 3 and Z. Okay, 3.5 and Z. Okay, the angle needs to be adjusted a little bit. This is just one of those troubleshooting things. Let's go for 4. Okay. And I'm going to expand this bottom part a little bit as well, just to match the particles a little bit more. Where are the particles? I just want to click on them. There we go. Okay, there we have some particles flowing consistently with it. Of course, we do need to add its randomness, so let's go for about 0.5. And you can increase the number if you want to. I think this is enough. I don't think we need to increase it because it is like the main thing. It's a highlight. That's really pretty. I like that. Okay, now for particles, we do need to make a small particle. So if you want to, you can go 3D view, next one, and you can use a plane or you can use a sphere. Absolutely up to you. I'm going to be using a sphere, UV sphere, and I'm going to be reducing it to its absolute minimum, just like with the other one. So I'm going to make this a shadeless white too. There we go. It can be left to cast shadows. It's really not a big deal. And let's just call it a sprinkler particle. Okay, that's good. Now we go back to the sprinklers and we add the particle. Let's just get it. Object, sprinkler particle. And it needs to be random sized, so they need to be a lot smaller. And I think you can add a little bit more. Let's make it more. So let's make it go to 600, and let's make the frames 5000, and let's see how much that is. Sure, you can barely see them. Oh, here's a problem. Hold on. I thought it looked a little bit odd. There we go. Okay, there they are. I think it might be a little bit small, so let's increase their size just a touch. And we can also do a little something to help with their size. And let's set this to strand and particle instead of time, or density go for size, and it starts out small and grows to its full size. So in the center you don't see anything, but on the edges you do. I think we can make them a little bit bigger, very small. Okay, I think that's fine. Okay, now we can get our camera out of the hole right there, and we can check this out. Okay, let's hit render. Needs subdivision. It really does. It's over here. I think one will do. Let's see. Let's make it 2. Yeah, make it 2. Let's make it 2. So for the viewport, nothing, but for rendering, we get this. Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, isn't that pretty? Oh, that's so beautiful. It's just a shame this thing casts a shadow as well. Yeah, one of those things, I guess. Like I said, you have the option of not casting any shadows, since you're not really used to sprinklers really casting much of a shadow. So if you turn the shadow off, this is what it looks like. Not really convincing. It's better with the stripe thing going there. Okay, so I'm just going to rotate it so it's not super obvious that it's looping. There we go. That looks nice. And we need to do a little bit of scene embellishment. So I'm just going to model a really basic sprinkler. I'm just going to, let's do a cube. I'm going to do a cube. And we need a hose pipe. Forgot to add the hose pipe. So for the hose pipe, we're just going to be using a curve. Just get a curve. Where did it place it? Okay, it's right there. Okay, it's nice and flat on the ground. See which direction it's going. So I'm going to be flipping it. Oh wait, oh, no, we're not going to be flipping it. I can just put this on the center, right there. Okay, make sure it's nice and 7. And now we're going to make the hose run the lawn. I think we should make it cross over. Happens a lot. And of course make it all automatic. So it's a little bit more convincing. Give it a bit of thickness. Not too much, I mean it's just a hose pipe. Ah, see, that's why it didn't look so big. Okay. Take it down a little bit more, and if you want to, you can increase this render resolution as well. It helps to make it smoother. 64 is generally good. And because it's in grass, you don't want to have the whole thing lying on top, but one thing you can do is move this one a little bit over and let it just go over the other one or under the other one. I'm going to make it go over since it's going around that way. Okay, now this thing gets to be joined and gets moved. Okay, it's still going through the floor. Let's give this thing a color as well. It should be a darker green typically. So you can go for background and go hose, or I'm going to do this instead. Because the material is already set up, so I'm going to make this one just a darker green. Make this intense, smoothness 0, and size a lot smaller. Something like that. Now let's check it out. And that's basically it. If you want to now, you can separate it out for different render layers and stuff like that to make it kind of, like I said, blurred over itself. Just so it's a little bit more glaring and bright and all that kind of stuff. But honestly and truly, this is just plain awesome. I like it. I really like it. And that's it for this tutorial. Have a great one and God bless you.